I tell the simple story that I became a Republican in 1980 because of Bill and Hillary Clinton, and I became an independent recently because of George Bush. There have been several things said this evening. These are just factual, correcting things. We talked about this backstage. Because of the media and the timeline and how people put all this together, the doctor brought up Unical a minute ago. Unical is actually owned by the Venezuelan government-owned Petroleus. They are not a U.S.-owned company anymore. If you know anything about the pegging of the dollar to oil and the pegging of the dollar to the euro, there's only two companies on the face of this planet that have done that. One is Iraq. You can see what happened to them. And the other one was Venezuela. And you can pretty well come to a conclusion there's been quite a bit of interference in Venezuela as to what to do about their pegging to the dollar. We tried to stomp Chavez to death politically down there. To address Sibel Evans that came up in the clip a minute ago, I interviewed Sibel Evans for a book that I wrote, and everybody thinks it's got a cute name to it, and I didn't even name it. It's titled One-Way Ticket to Crawford, Texas. A conservative Republican speaks out. Where my story started in this actually started in 1999. I left Wall Street. I've been in this city many, many times. In fact, I've been in the World Trade Center many, many times. I used to office with Pre-Base Capital Markets at 100 Gold Street. Then we all moved with Smith Barney, and we went up here at 1345 Avenue of the Americas. And when Smith Barney moved down to Greenwich, 380 Greenwich, that's when I left the company and preferred to do something else with my life other than travel 500,000 to 1 million miles a year. But one of the things that I did was I went with UUNet. I saw telecom and AP-centrics as something that was interesting, possibly profitable if you did it right. And I met a company in November of 1999 at a telecom conference. In the book, The Forbidden Truth, there's the Broussard book, Bin Laden, The Forbidden Truth. They disclosed that Brightest Corporation, excuse me, had actually signed a contract with Turkmenistan and with Pakistan to build the Trans-Afghanistan pipeline. Now, they were not able to ferret out the information I was, and I did this face-to-face. Excuse me, I am having problems with my voice. What we found is that the Brightest also had a contract with the Taliban and with General Rashid Dostum. The last remaining obstacle after our government and after our influence peddlers had put enough pressure on Turkmenistan to upend that government's agreements with Brightest. They also upended Pakistan. There's a good possibility when Bhutto was overturned, we may have been behind it. We have a lot of companies over there, including 4 that have electrical generation power plants in Pakistan right now, and they've had them since the mid-1990s. They wanted and need cheap natural gas to make those projects feasible. Now, some of you may have heard about the Enron-Dabol fiasco in Dabol, India. That is not a feasible project because of the cost of the natural gas is too high. They proceeded anyway. We lost $1 billion in U.S. government guarantees. But the thing that stuck out to me the most is we found that this is a bipartisan problem. It's on both sides of the aisle, and that's why I finally decided to stand up and tell everything I knew. We actually know that there are we were actually putting RICO lawsuits together to go after certain parties, not about 9/11. Our research had nothing to do with 9/11. It had to do with international securities fraud. It had to do with telecom fraud. Because of an interview that I heard on the radio one time, that led me to Sibel Edmonds. I'm not under a gag order. I wanted to compare names. I wanted to compare trails, what we call rabbit trails. When you're investigating, these people will throw everything out in front of you they can to keep from getting caught. Sometimes you have to wade through 10, 15, or 20 shell corporations just to find out who the true owner of something is. And what we found was the same thing she found. And she confirmed it in a conversation with me just about the time they were putting the lid on her. She found drug trafficking, money laundering. She found foreign names. and she found American names in the financing of 9/11. Now, what she found had nothing to do with counterterrorism. I even quote in my book, sometimes it pays, Dick, did you check your 6? Did you check at 3, 9, and 12 to see if they were sitting right across the table or standing right next to you? What they found inside the FBI actually came from ongoing drug investigations dating back to 1998. And I heard the other day, just a minute ago, Mr. Thompson brought up Argentina. The company that had the contract with the Taliban is Brightest Corporation. They are from Argentina. On September 9, 2003, they won a lawsuit in our Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. They had been tied up in the Texas courts since 1996. They won $500 million in a judgment for interference of contract in Turkmenistan. The only remaining thing was to take the Taliban and Brightest out. And then we control it all. We control the Caspian Basin oil. We have the pipeline to get it to the sea. The oil and gas in the Caspian Basin, in current dollars, is worth somewhere between 11 and 12 trillion dollars. If you look at who was on the 9/11 Commission, on the Democrat side, who was directly benefiting, Mr. Benveniste law firm was the law firm that kept Brightest tied up. They're also the law firm that lost the lawsuit when it went to the Supreme Court and the Fifth Circuit. They kept them tied up at least from 1998. They're involved in Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan in about 20 different ways. You got the guy Thompson, the Republican governor, former governor of Illinois. He is sitting on the board of FMC. They have an oil and gas subsidiary. They make equipment. They're selling a lot of it overseas in the Caspian. Jamie Gorelick, I thought she was going to be a go-getter. I mean, I was rooting for her because she acted like she knew what she was doing. She sits on the board of Schlumberger, which is a competitor to Halliburton. Just within 2 weeks prior to the 9/11 Commission saying Sinai died and handing it over to the President and Congress to change our rights some more, which is what I think they plan to do, Schlumberger finally comes forward and admits they're having record profits in this last quarter, and they're doing a lot of big bucks business in the Caspian Basin. If you look at the reality that Brightest had a contract with the Taliban, we had landlocked oil and gas deals. We had to get it to the ocean. We had people actually doing business in Pakistan. You literally have to look at 9/11 and all of those foregoing issues as inseparable. There is your Pearl Harbor. And that our government can sit there and contrive policy like this. I came up with 4 words in this book. One was hopelessness. I see it all over this country, and I've seen it for a long time. The second word that came up to my mind was the indifference of our government. When you were speaking about the EPA, they can literally change reality because they're afraid it may affect something. And their policy does not have anything to do with quality of life or life. If it snuffs your life out economically or health-wise, so be it, if they think it's good policy. And it's both sides of the aisle in D.C. I call them financial terrorists. I don't know what you would call them.
I'd like to ask the first question to Webster Tarpley. Can you talk about the likely role of the neoconservatives, the civilians inside the Pentagon, in perpetrating 9/11? And if you like, can you comment on their likely response to a successful 9/11 movement that might put in jeopardy their hold on power this November?
When Bush ran for office, he ran, frankly, as a moron who would be a moron, but he would get the best advisors. So it's to the advisors that we have to look. And if we look at a Cheney or a Wolfowitz or some of these other people, here we see people that may very well be the conduits of the rogue network into the White House. But make no mistake, it is that rogue network which has been running the United States. Now, if I say rogue network, it may make them seem a little bit too lonely, and I don't think they're lonely. People who are old enough to remember the Iran-Contra years can remember words like the invisible government, the parallel government, the secret government, the shadow government. Senator Inouye said they had their own Army, Navy, Air Force, Treasury, their own policies, their own ways of making decisions. That invisible government, that secret government, I submit, is alive and well. The neocons are certainly